My fiancé said, "I need one last trip with my ex for closure." Then, goodbye. I nodded, canceled venue, moved savings, switched vendors to refunds, then sent her the itinerary she wanted, one way, under his email. At her bridal shower, the caterer's note was read aloud, and my new plus one introduced herself. I was 33, male, and engaged to Marissa, 31. We had been together for years. I worked as a product manager for a fintech in Austin. She was a social media manager for a boutique skincare brand. We rented a 2-bed in South Lamar for $24.50. We liked Veracruz tacos, Barton Springs, and trivia at radio. Our friends were the kind who screenshot memes and forget birthdays. It never bothered me until it did. In late spring, my boss offered a jump. A Seattle role with a director title, $185,000 base, 20% bonus, $40K RSU, and $25,000 relocation. Hybrid near South Lake Union. Health, $401K match, and a learning stipend. I told Marissa on our patio. She sipped a ranch water and smiled in a way that was not kind. She said, "That city is gray and boring." I said, "It is also a real step up." She said, "No one cares about your ladder." I said, "It doubles our runway." She said, "It ruins my brand deals." I said, "You can pitch Pacific Northwest content." She said, "I do not want to move for your ego." It landed like a slap wrapped in a joke. I let the moment pass and thought about air miles and boundaries. Update 1: I accepted the offer. I did it quietly. I emailed the recruiter from a coffee shop on South 1st. I signed the packet and set a start date for September 9. At home, Marissa kept her rhythm. She repeated the same lines. She said, "Austin is hot and fun." She said, "Seattle is damp and sad." She said, "You can turn it down." Her friends piled on in our group chat. They sent frog memes and rain jokes. One typed, "Who moves for a spreadsheet?" Another wrote, "He just wants LinkedIn claps." I smiled and wrote nothing. I moved my direct deposit to a new account at a credit union. I opened a high-yield savings. I set alerts and moved my emergency fund to different rails. At night, I researched Seattle neighborhoods. I mapped commute times to South Lake Union. I toured rentals on FaceTime. I liked a 1-bed in Lower Queen Anne for $21.50. It had a view of the Space Needle through a skinny alley. The building offered a gym and a package room that actually worked. On Saturdays, I drove north around Pflugerville to clear my head. I listened to long podcasts. I sketched a quiet exit plan. I called a therapist and booked 3 sessions. I liked hearing my own voice be plain. Update 2 weeks later, I sat Marissa down at the table. Our AC hummed against the afternoon heat. I said, "I accepted the promotion." She said, "You what?" I said, "I start in September." She said, "You didn't ask me." I said, "I told you, you mocked it." She said, "I was helping you be realistic." I said, "Your realism sounded like contempt." She looked at me like I had broken a vase. She said, "We are planning a wedding." I said, "The deposit is refundable until July." She said, "You cannot pull this on me." I said, "I am not pulling, I am choosing." Her voice got quiet. That voice meant the red line was near. She said, "Choose me or choose that job." I said, "I choose my self-respect." She said, "So you choose Seattle." I said, "I choose a future that is not small." She gave me the ultimatum and waited to see me panic. I did not panic. My hands were steady on the table. I loved her, and also I did not love the math. Update 3: Fallout arrived like Texas thunder. Loud, sudden, gone, then back again. Week 1, she was angry. She slammed drawers and texted her friends. She posted a story with a sad song. The caption read, "Some men do not get partnership." The comments clapped. Week 2, she bargained. She said, "We can do distance." I said, "You said you do not date long distance." She said, "For you, I will try." I said, "You want me to fail." She said, "I want you to listen." Week 3, she drooped and cried in bed. I made soup and brought water. She asked me to hold her hand. I did, because kindness costs pennies. Week 4, she returned to anger. She said I was cold and stubborn. I said I was consistent. We did not touch. I booked movers for August 28. I packed my stuff into 8 labeled boxes. Kitchen. Books, media, gear, clothing, desk, documents, misc. She refused to help. She had a brunch. She posted waffles and a caption with hearts. I loaded the U-Haul with the driver. I left my key on the counter. I wrote a kind note to the landlord about the sink. I drove north toward Dallas for the night, then to Amarillo, then Santa Fe, then Salt Lake City, then Boise, then Seattle. I arrived 5 days later and unlocked a new door. My new job started slow and then sprinted. The office had quiet rooms and standing desks. The coffee was good. My team shipped a feature that saved merchants 6 seconds per checkout. 6 seconds became marketing copy and a decent bump in retention. I walked to work or took the bus. I bought a rain jacket because the cliché is simply the climate. In the evenings, I cooked simple food. I slept well. It still surprised me. Update 4, I joined a gym near the Key Arena. I lifted light and stretched long. My shoulders stopped living at my ears. On Saturdays, I hit Pike Place early before the crew's shirts. I bought Honeycrisp apples and a cinnamon roll. I watched tourists take fish photos and remembered to smile. I met neighbors in the elevator. A nurse named Taylor. A sound guy named Rich. A woman with a corgi named Bean. We waved and swapped package jokes. In October, the city threw a small block festival. I stood near a jazz trio and thought about decisions. A stranger offered me a paper cup of cider. I said thanks and meant it. It felt like my life was widening without noise. Money changed shape. My base hit the account like a drum line. RSUs started to vest monthly. My savings crossed numbers that used to feel like fiction. In December, my boss gave me a $12,000 bonus and a slide with a cartoon rocket. I laughed and texted my sister a selfie in the break room. I toured a townhome in Ballard. 2 beds, 1.5 baths, 1,250 square feet, listed at $625,000. The HOA was reasonable. The sunlight was loyal. I made a bid at $615,000 and locked it at $621,500 after counters. I put 20% down. The mortgage was a number that did not scare me. During all this, Marissa's friends and family pinged me. Her mom wrote, "She is hurting, please call." I wrote back, "I hope she heals." Her cousin asked, "Did you cheat?" I wrote back, "No, I moved." Her lies surfaced in odd places. A mutual friend asked if I had blocked Marissa from my credit. I said I never shared my credit. He said she told people I froze her cards. I said she did not have my cards. The story she told was theater. The story I lived was quiet. Update 5 in January, I posted my promotion to LinkedIn. I wrote precise words. Grateful to lead checkout optimization at Galleon, excited to build. I added a photo taken on a clear day. The space needle hovered to the right. The post did numbers. My ex-boss wrote a kind note. A founder I knew DM'd me. Recruiters did what recruiters do. The post hit Marissa's radar within an hour. She texted a screenshot and 3 dots and then nothing. An hour later, she sent a paragraph. She wrote, "I misread you." "I did not think you would make it." I wrote, "I know." She wrote, "I am proud of you." I wrote, "Thank you." Then the flood came. People who had mocked me wrote apologies that blamed the weather. A friend typed, "I thought the rain would eat you." Another wrote, "We joked because we were scared to try." Marissa's brand friends, the glossy ones, sent short texts that said, "We heard another version." They apologized and then pivoted to ask about jobs at my company. I kept it polite. My family watched quietly. My dad said, "You are doing steady work." My mom said, "We like your kitchen." My sister sent a photo of my niece wearing a tiny Seahawks hoodie. I was fine with that team for the day. In March, the bridal shower arrived like a wave back in Austin. I was not there. They were. The caterer returned my deposit the week before. She included my note in the paperwork because the note asked her to. The video reached me that afternoon. It was 3 minutes long. Someone filmed as the host read a letter from the caterer. The room went still halfway through. You could hear a glass clink. My new +1 was not a date. She was the truth. The truth tends to arrive with receipts. Update 6, it was late spring when Marissa flew to Seattle. I did not know she had booked a flight. She texted from downstairs. She wrote, "I am in your lobby." I replied, "You came uninvited." She wrote, "Please come down." I met her by the mailboxes. She wore a long coat and an expression from early days. She looked smaller and more careful. She said, "I made mistakes." I said, "I know." She said, "I panicked about losing Austin." I said, "You mocked me in our home." She said, "I hate that part." I said, "It was the whole part." She cried soft tears. She said, "I want to move here." I said, "No." She said, "I changed." I said, "Your circumstances changed." She said, "I can be better." I said, "You can be better for you." She said, "Can we at least get coffee?" I said, "We can have closure in this lobby." She inhaled like a swimmer. I said, "You called me small for wanting more." I said, "You posted pity for likes." I said, "You used my name for your plot." She said, "I was hurt." I said, "You were cruel." She said, "I miss you." I said, "I miss how kind we were at first." She said, "So there is a chance." I said, "There is not." She nodded. She wiped her face. She left without drama. I stood with the lobby camera light blinking over my shoulder and felt exactly nothing and exactly free. Update 7. 2 weeks later, a lawyer letter found my inbox. It claimed entitlement to wedding deposits and furniture value. It cited an engagement ring I had not bought yet because I planned a simple band. It cited a honeymoon I had not booked because we had not agreed on time off. It was a word salad pinned to a hope. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Her name was Rena. She loved clarity and charged in 6-minute blocks. She wrote, "No cohabitation contract, no joint title, no standing." She drafted a response with a list of facts. She attached screenshots of my separate accounts. She referenced the Texas law on engagement gifts given and not given. It took one email to end the legal cosplay. We never heard back. Marissa then tried social media. She filmed a story crying in her car. She said I had ambushed her at the shower. She said I stole deposits that were hers because weddings are for brides. People asked tiny questions in her comments. A mutual friend typed, "Galleon paid those checks, not him." Another wrote, "Caterers do not ambush, they email." Her allies faded. Her audience shrank. She pivoted to skincare routines and avoided the topic. The backfire was slow. It burned only what was dry. The green parts of my life were not in range. Update 8. A year passed. I was 34 and full in my new groove. I ran a bigger team. My base rose to 205,000. My bonus hit 25%. My RSUs at Grant were a number that made my brother swear. I bought a used Forester for weekend hikes. I closed on a small cabin near Cle Alum for $309,000 with 15% down. It was 1 hour and 25 minutes from my door if traffic behaved. It had a wood stove and a porch that faced pines. I met someone at a neighborhood board game night. Her name was Naomi. She was 32, a nurse at Swedish. She liked dumplings and rainy runs. She said things only when she meant them. We dated slow and then not slow. She met my sister on FaceTime and won the room in 10 seconds. She liked my quiet and I liked her steady. One afternoon, Naomi and I were painting the cabin bedroom a color named Forest Path when a message pinged my phone. It was from Marissa. It was long and honest. She wrote, "I am sorry for the bridal shower. I am sorry for the trip comment. I am sorry for mocking your job. I did not know how to lose." She wrote, "I thought you would never leave. I thought I could scare you into staying small." She wrote, "I was wrong." I typed, "Thank you for saying that." I typed, "I hope you build a life you like." Then I put the phone down and kept painting the wall with Naomi. We laughed about how paint names are tiny poems. Final update: 3 months later, I flew to Austin for a work conference. I tacked on a day to see an old favorite taco truck and the hike I missed. I also agreed to meet Marissa's parents for coffee. Her mom had emailed me. The subject read, "A request from parents." We met at a cafe near Zilker. They looked older. The dad fiddled with his glasses. The mom held her cup with both hands like warmth could fix memory. Her mom said, "We owe you an apology." I said, "You do not." Her dad said, "We do." Her mom said, "We backed her at the shower. We should have stopped the assumptions. We raised her to win every fight. We did not teach her how to lose." I said, "She is learning." Her dad said, she told us about the lobby and the letter. I said, I wanted us both to walk away with dignity. Her mom said, you have a kind way of ending things. I nodded. We sat in the quiet and let the coffee cool. Her dad said, what would you tell a young man like you? I thought about the distance between Austin heat and Seattle rain and how both answer to the same sky. I said, pick the life that feels like air. I said, do not explain to people who benefit from your confusion. I said, document the facts and let the story tell itself. They listened. They looked tired and also lighter. We hugged awkwardly. I walked out into a bright Austin day and felt the good weight of my choices. Back in Seattle, I stood on my Ballard steps with Naomi. The evening was blue and soft. We planned tacos and a movie. We talked about taking the ferry to Bainbridge next weekend. My phone buzzed once with a calendar reminder. 2 years at Galleon in 4 months. I smiled and clicked done. I looked at Naomi. I said, want to walk to the bakery? She said, always. We walked under string lights and laughed about nothing. I did not think about the shower or the letter or the lobby. I thought about bread and the smell of rain on warm concrete. I was happy. I was peaceful. I had a home, a job I enjoyed, a woman who met me at my height and not at my knees. I had learned to leave when staying cost too much. I had learned that revenge can be silent. It can be a well-lived calendar and a steady pulse. I had learned that closure rarely arrives in a suitcase. It arrives in the way your keys feel when they fit a door that is yours.